It's just a harmless prank, Emma. Stop being so dramatic. My stepbrother Kevin smirked as I lay in the hospital bed, tubes running from my arms, my body still weak from nearly slipping into a diabetic coma. My mother stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, while my stepdad Thomas paced the room, avoiding my gaze. I'm Emma Matthews, 24, and I've been living with type 1 diabetes since I was 8. My insulin pump wasn't just a medical device, it was my lifeline. Everyone in our family knew this, including Kevin, my 16-year-old stepbrother who'd been living with us since my mom remarried 3 years ago. Harmless, I whispered, my voice hoarse. The doctors said I could have died. He's just a kid. My mother interjected quickly. He didn't understand what he was doing, but Kevin wasn't just a kid, and this wasn't his first prank. Since moving in, he'd been escalating his behavior, each joke more dangerous than the last. It started with hiding my glucose tablets, then progressing to tampering with my food labels. Each time, my parents defended him, dismissing my concerns as oversensitivity. I'd installed a small security camera in my room last month, after my glucose meter mysteriously disappeared for 3 days. You probably misplaced it, Mom had said then, but I knew better. I just needed proof. The night before I ended up in the hospital, I'd gone to bed early, exhausted from a long day at work. The camera captured everything. Kevin sneaking into my room at 2 a.m., deliberately adjusting my insulin pump settings while I slept. The smirk on his face was anything but childish ignorance. Show them the footage, my best friend Lisa urged from the corner of the room. She'd been the one who found me unconscious in my apartment when I didn't show up for our morning coffee meet. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. Before you defend him again, I said to my parents, you need to see something. The color drained from my mother's face as she watched the video. Kevin's careful, deliberate movements were clear in the night vision footage. The way he checked to make sure I was asleep, the methodical adjustment of my pump settings, the satisfied smile as he left the room. I was just curious, Kevin stammered, his confident smirk finally faltering. I didn't think it would actually hurt her. Curious. Lisa's voice cracked with anger. You changed her insulin delivery rates. The doctors said her blood sugar was dangerously high when they brought her in. Thomas finally stopped pacing. Kevin, tell me you didn't know what you were doing. But the footage didn't lie. Kevin had spent weeks watching me manage my diabetes. He'd seen me adjust my pump settings, heard me explain how critical the correct insulin doses were. This was no accident. I just wanted to teach her a lesson. Kevin muttered, his true colors showing through the cracks of his innocent facade. She's always getting all the attention with her special needs and medical conditions. It's not fair. The silence in the hospital room was deafening. My mother's hand dropped from Kevin's shoulder, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw real fear in her eyes. Not fear for me, fear of what her precious son was capable of. We need to talk about this, I said firmly, despite my exhaustion, about all of it. The missing glucose meter, the tampered food labels, and now this. These aren't pranks. This is deliberate. The monitor beside my bed beeped steadily, marking the tension-filled moments as my family finally faced the truth they'd been denying. Their perfect misunderstood teenage son had nearly killed his stepsister, and they could no longer pretend it was just a childish mistake. The security camera had captured more than just one night's events. It had exposed the truth about Kevin, and the dangerous game my parents had been playing by enabling his behavior. As I lay there, still recovering from his harmless joke, I knew things would never be the same in our family again. And this was just the beginning. The next few days in the hospital were a blur of medical tests, police interviews, and uncomfortable family confrontations. After seeing the security footage, the doctors had reported the incident as a potential assault. Kevin's prank had crossed the line from familial dispute into criminal territory. You're really going to let them investigate your own brother? My mother pleaded, clutching her designer handbag as she sat beside my hospital bed. The bags under her eyes betrayed her sleepless nights, but her concern was still focused on Kevin. Stepbrother, I corrected quietly. And yes, Mom, this has to stop. The police had been particularly interested in my documented history of Kevin's escalating behavior. My detailed diary of missing medical supplies, tampered equipment, and suspicious accidents painted a disturbing pattern. The detective assigned to my case, a no-nonsense woman named Detective Torres, took it all very seriously. Your stepbrother's actions show premeditation, she explained during one interview. The security footage proves he understood exactly what he was doing with your insulin pump. At 16, he's old enough to face serious consequences. Thomas, my stepdad, tried a different approach. He offered to pay for my medical bills, therapy, whatever I needed. If I'd just agree to handle this within the family, we can get Kevin counseling, he suggested, his voice strained. He's been struggling since his mom passed away. He needs help, not punishment. But I remembered Kevin's words in the hospital, his resentment over my special needs. This wasn't about grief or teenage rebellion. This was calculated cruelty. Lisa visited daily, bringing fresh clothes and her unwavering support. Don't let them guilt you into backing down, she advised while helping me sort through the get well cards piling up on my bedside table. Kevin needs to face consequences before he does this to someone else. She was right. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. Kevin's behavior was escalating, and my parents' enablement only encouraged him. What if his next prank targeted someone else with medical needs? I couldn't live with that on my conscience. The hospital's social worker recommended I stay with Lisa after my discharge, until your home situation is sorted out, she said diplomatically. But we all knew what she meant. It wasn't safe for me to return to a house where Kevin had access to my medical equipment. My mother was devastated when I told her my decision. We're family, she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. Families stick together through hard times. Family doesn't try to kill each other, Mom, I replied, my voice firm despite the emotion threatening to break through. And family doesn't defend someone who does. The day I was discharged, I noticed Kevin's absence from the usual family drama. According to Lisa's sources, her sister worked at his school. He'd been suspended pending investigation. Apparently, the security footage had sparked a deeper look into his past behavior. They found disturbing posts on his private social media. Detective Torres informed me during a follow-up interview. Screenshots of medical websites about insulin overdose, jokes about teaching diabetics a lesson. This wasn't an impulsive act. My mother and Thomas were forced to face the reality they'd been denying. Their perfect son had methodically planned to harm me, documenting his intentions along the way. The harmless prankster facade was crumbling, revealing something much darker beneath. As Lisa helped me settle into her spare room, I received a text from my mother. Kevin's being evaluated by a psychiatrist. They're recommending residential treatment. I'm so sorry, Emma. I should have listened sooner. It was the first real acknowledgement of her role in enabling Kevin's behavior, but it felt like too little, too late. The trust that had been broken couldn't be repaired with a simple apology. That night, as I carefully checked my new insulin pump the hospital had replaced the one Kevin tampered with, I realized how close I'd come to becoming another tragic headline. Teen's prank leads to stepsister's death, but thanks to that security camera, I was alive to tell a different story. Lisa sat with me as I adjusted my pump settings, neither of us mentioning the elephant in the room, that this simple medical task now carried an extra weight of anxiety. You're safe here, she assured me, squeezing my hand. No more harmless jokes. I nodded, but we both knew this story wasn't over. Kevin's residential treatment evaluation was just the beginning. There would be legal proceedings, family therapy sessions, and countless difficult conversations ahead. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like the truth was finally coming to light. Sometimes it takes a security camera to expose what family denial tries to hide. 6 months after the harmless joke that nearly killed me, I sat in the family court waiting area, my hands clutching the updated medical report my doctor had prepared. Kevin's juvenile court hearing was about to begin, and despite my mother's repeated pleas for leniency, I wasn't backing down. The psychiatric evaluation had revealed disturbing patterns in Kevin's behavior. He wasn't just a troubled teen acting out knots, he showed signs of calculated manipulation and a concerning lack of empathy. The residential treatment facility, where he'd spent the last few months, had documented multiple incidents of him attempting to manipulate staff and other patients. Your testimony is crucial, my victim advocate explained, reviewing my statement one last time. The judge needs to understand this wasn't an isolated incident. Lisa sat beside me, her presence steady as always. She'd taken a day off work to be here, understanding how difficult this would be. Facing Kevin again, telling my story in front of everyone Menard, it wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about making sure this never happened to anyone else. My mother and Thomas arrived last, both looking worn down by months of legal proceedings and family therapy. Mom tried to catch my eye, but I focused on my papers. Our relationship had become a casualty of her continued attempts to minimize Kevin's actions. He's making progress in treatment, she'd insisted during our last forced family therapy session. Can't we just move forward? But moving forward didn't mean forgetting. The nightmares still came. Memories of waking up in the hospital, the terrifying realization of how vulnerable I'd been in my own home, my new apartment's security system, and carefully monitored medical supplies were constant reminders of trust shattered. When Kevin was led into the courtroom, he looked smaller in his formal clothes, less threatening than the smirking teenager who'd stood in my hospital room, but I noticed how his eyes darted around, calculating, assessing Munner, the same look he'd had in the security footage. The proceedings began with the prosecution presenting evidence, the security footage, Kevin's disturbing social media posts, my medical records, and testimony from his treatment team. The defense painted him as a troubled youth who needed help, not punishment, but the facts spoke for themselves. When it was my turn to speak, I stood steady, my voice clear, despite my racing heart. Kevin didn't just tamper with my insulin pump, I testified. He systematically targeted my medical needs, escalating his behavior over months. Each prank was designed to harm me, to make me feel unsafe in my own home. This wasn't a mistake or a joke, it was a deliberate attempt to cause serious harm. I described the pattern of missing supplies, the tampered food labels, the constant anxiety of wondering what he'd target next. The judge listened intently, particularly when I detailed how my parents' dismissal of my concerns had emboldened Kevin's behavior. Kevin's own testimony revealed the cracks in his reformed image. He struggled to maintain the appearance of remorse, his answers showing the same entitled attitude that had led to his actions. I just wanted her to know how it felt to not be the center of attention, he said, his mask slipping. Everything was always about her diabetes, her needs. It wasn't fair. The judge's decision was clear. Kevin would remain in residential treatment for at least another year, followed by strict supervised probation. He was ordered to have no contact with me, and any violation would result in juvenile detention. My mother cried when the sentence was announced. Thomas stood stone-faced, his hand on her shoulder, but I felt only relief. Finally, someone in authority had acknowledged the seriousness of Kevin's actions. After the hearing, my mother tried one last time to bridge the gap between us. "He's still family," she pleaded. "We can heal from this." I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing the woman who had chosen to defend her stepson's attempts to harm me. "Some things can't be healed, Mom. Some trust once broken, stays broken." Walking out of the courthouse with Lisa, I felt lighter. The security camera that had captured Kevin's harmless joke had done more than save my life. It had forced my family to face the truth they'd been denying. Today I volunteer with support groups for young adults with chronic illnesses, sharing my story as a warning about medical abuse and family enablement. My insulin pump is now part of a more sophisticated medical alert system, and my new apartment has security cameras in every room. Some might call it paranoid, but I call it survival. Sometimes the most dangerous threats come from those closest to us, disguised as harmless jokes, and sometimes it takes a security camera to expose the truth that family denial tries to hide. Kevin's prank nearly cost me my life, but it also taught me an invaluable lesson: trust your instincts, document everything, and never let anyone minimize your right to feel safe in your own home.